But when you measure it flat, it contradicts that. I'm spitting flat facts and that. And I know you don't like that. Google Maps is flat, it presents elevation profiles like that. I'm a spitting flat earth king. Sentence has a ring, doing my own thing. If Earth was a big roast chicken, factually finger licking chicken. We just got the measurements missing. I'm spitting eggs and begs, begging the question lesson. I've said it before, time after time. I'm the spitting flat Earth king of rhyme.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a Coffee, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using stock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Neil, Refracted Curvature, Surf Daddy, and a whole bunch of people in the Flipside Discord server. So, welcome one and all.
How are you?
All right, we were talking about Dostoevsky, if I'm saying his name correctly, and I couldn't remember why I'd recently heard his name, and while I was doing the intro I remembered why I heard his name. So I think your average YouTube algorithm is influenced by the microphones you have in your house, and it will start to suggest various videos that are being talked about by subject category. So recently I've been talking about Father Ted because he has a direct correlation with some of the things we do on the show. Specifically, this cow is small, those cows are far away. So YouTube has been playing me episodes of Father Ted on autoplay when I've not been looking or doing the dishwasher. Suddenly Father Ted's playing, and it played through a couple of them, and I'm like, I quite like these still, they're still funny. And the episode that's got that in is, I think it's called Holiday. Nevertheless, another episode that is either just before that one or just after that one has him going to get a book that he's got signed by the author. Now, the author dutifully signs his book incorrectly and calls him Father Curly instead of Father Crilly, and he ends up following her all the way home, and she ends up in his house. So he keeps seeing her on the way home. I'm all embarrassed because he keeps having to mouth the same thing, good luck with the book, to her. Anyway, he eventually gets home to see her there and then tucks her into the spare room, and Father Jack's in there, drunk of course. But when she wakes up in the morning, she comes down to him having staged his front room to look like an intellectual. So he's got Crime and Punishment and War and Peace on the desk, just casually. And she goes, oh, I didn't know you liked Dostoevsky, if I'm saying it correctly. And she picks up Crime and Punishment. And she says, oh, yes, I love Dostoevsky. I love Crime and Punishment. And she goes, oh, do you think he got a bit more cynical towards the end of the book? And he goes, yes, I do. She goes, whereabouts do you think he got more cynical? He says, towards the end. He says, which bit did you like the most? He says, I like the bit where he moved past the crime and went on to the punishment. It just reminded me of something that I said I didn't want to do. So I've still got 2 outstanding books from Level Playing Poem, and I've gone through the really easy to read ones that were for my 6 and 9-year-old, and I've read a little bit of them on camera. The ones actually addressed to myself and my wife I haven't actually read yet, and I don't want to be on camera with them pretending that I've read them and going, oh, I like the bit about the punishment more than the crime. Because it obviously shows you haven't read the book. So in the case of the 2 that I've promoted so far, I've gone through it in full, and then when I've gone, I like this, I'll fold the page over on a particular one, so when I'm on camera I can flick very quickly to the ones that I've previously read, liked, and want to read out on camera, so I don't look like an idiot pretending to be an intellectual fart sniffer by having Crime and Punishment or War and Peace out on my kitchen table when some guest that I want to impress comes round. Anyway, it just was funny because it came up specifically for the translation reasons. So we were talking about Newton's letter to Mr. Bentley, if that's his name, and in it he's specifically alluding to the idea of the gravity force being a nonsense in his special linguistic way. And Refracted Curvature was pointing out, well, if you go through the Principia, it isn't actually the case that he's saying it's not a force. He's just saying it's acting via an agent or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly what John went through with me. He's only said it once. But has apparently had a row with a different former Flat Earth debate panel member in this regard. So we were just going through that, and to title in a nice little bow, John was saying, well, just because I've read Dostoevsky and I haven't read it in Russian doesn't mean I haven't read the book, just because it's not translated, because it is translated rather in the original Latin, in the case of the Principia or the letter to Bentley. I don't know if he'd have written in that particular letter in Latin, but nevertheless, the translating aspect of it isn't necessarily cause to suggest you don't understand the text just because it's gone through the translation process, I think was John's overarching point, rather than the fact that he's read Crime and Punishment. Is that a good enough summary? Probably not.
Yeah, because the claim was that if it didn't say Viz specifically, then it, in the Principia, then he never claimed gravity was a force. And I got a citation where it did say Viz, but it was translation. So he was... So it was something to see.
Yes. We're working currently on the book, so just before the show, I know that the current chapter that we're working on is about 19 pages of A4 long, because it's quite a lot of information that's been gathered together from the various different times we've worked on the book prior and the 5 previous drafts. The one that was cobbled together and being read from was the 6th draft of this book that I'm writing. And it's, like I say, very information rich, but therefore worthy of being hacked down considerably, which has already been done, even though I'd intended for my wife to just read through all 20 pages. And then from there, we'll start working on it, knowing what's actually in them. Whereas on previous chapters, we've gone through it and immediately started editing it, having just gone through the full draft in its entirety as a single read through. But in this instance, because the chapter's so information rich, I'm like, no, we need to do that again. We'll read through the full chapter in full without making any changes. And we're about halfway through it after, I don't know, probably wasn't an hour, maybe 45 minutes of reading. We're only halfway through the chapter. So from the perspective of it's going to be a very information-rich book, then, that's good, because it means that we've got all the information, some of it not necessarily correct, as John's saying, well, actually. So there might be some adjustments to be made in that regard. But also, getting it down to a more concise chapter, so that anybody who does actually come across the gravity chapter can get all of the information in terms of hopefully representing, is it called steel manning my opponent's position when I try and best accurately serve their position to my reader. I think that's the correct term. Is it steel man? Anyway, regardless, I want to get it correct, not because I'm particularly fearful of anybody picking it up and reading it from my opponent's side and going, you've quoted him wrong. My overarching point in terms of my intended purposes for the book are to communicate the process of housekeeping accumulation to the redundancy of housekeeping towards the end of the book, which makes people along the journey of reading it realise that Earth is simply measured flat. And, having an extensive knowledge of heliocentrism, while might seem very advantageous if you're a dweeb who thinks that this is interesting to people, it isn't. It's boring. And it's demonstrated by my wife yawning while she's reading through it. I mean, this stuff is tedious. To a 12-year-old myself, I thought this stuff was amazing. Space and sci-fi in general was cool, right? When you're 12, as a fully grown adult, I'm like rolling my eyes thinking this stuff's tedious. Because it is. It's boring, fart sniffer, 12-year-old boy that's never grown up stuff that our opponents specifically think that is going to make them righteous in terms of how the world works. And it's a bit of a magic trick in that regard, understanding the complexities of heliocentrism, specifically gravity, does give some of our fart-sniffing opponents the ability to think that they are in some way influencing the world that they inhabit. Like, nah. especially when it comes to gravity, because it's utterly inconsequential. It's a nothing. It doesn't really do anything. I mean, it's simultaneously in the mind's eye of someone inconsequential to the discussion, does everything, but for what? For what ends? You know, it doesn't achieve anything practical and doesn't actually serve any practical purpose in even the heliocentric rhetoric. It's kind of nothing burger. Gravity, that is, specifically.
It's an if statement, right? If we lived on a ball, then there would be something holding us to the ball. And then they take an inertial plane where the force would only be valid and somehow intermarry the two in gravity.
Yeah. But they've nullified it in the most recent rhetoric of gravity. You know, with us highlighting this with our phraseology, you know, the force that's not a force, but you can think of as it a force in a fourth dimensional bent pseudo-Riemannian space-time geometry. You know, those sorts of elongated descriptions of something are only necessitated by us acknowledging that we appreciate where 111 years ago there was a claim that you had to explain why things go down. You know, I remember saying to my wife while we're doing the editing, you know, we've got a balloon room, you know what I mean? When you say things all go down, I've got an old Valentine's balloon that's still, you know, hanging around, and it simply isn't. You know, when I think about the clouds in the sky or the fart that's been let off by one of my girls, you just think that is not forming a puddle. It is not going down. So this idea that you've got to explain why things go down, they don't. Some things go down, some things go up, some things remain completely neutral. But that isn't necessarily any cause for my need to explain things. But I think I'd be doing the chapter short or the reader disservice if I didn't in some way explain the density of the object within the respect of the medium that it's travelling up or down in. And I don't know, I don't want to. It's why I'm hesitating in saying it now to the audience. It's like, this is not incumbent upon me to explain. Why am I having to? My recognising that it's redundant kind of makes me feel like, well, why should I have to explain it? And then I remember why, because everybody's told it's got significance and told that it's important. Therefore, there's going to be an expectation of an explanation for what our version of gravity is. And you're like, what do you mean our version of this nothing burger? Why do I have to explain Archimedes to people? I don't. You know, even as a flat earther, I don't need an equivalent. Now, I do appreciate that there is a certain faction of Flat Earth that has taken it upon themselves to invent an equivalent so they can sell you free energy. But that's not me. So I don't see the need other than the necessity or expectation, not necessity of the reader. So it's kind of a bit snarl-mouthed while I say it, because I'm like, why am I don't have to do this. This is not my problem.
Not once you come to the understanding that it's just measured flat, you're right. But you could cut it short and just say it's medium dependent. That's it.
Why am I explaining it at all?
What you're saying.
My disdain is down to the fact that I've got to explain it at all. Like most things, though, most heliocentric rhetoric, I just see it as filling up space in my head unnecessarily now. It's like, Earth's measured flat. It's geography. What's that? You've been taught religious beliefs in a science class. Therefore, the geography is still, what, different? It's the same as you're using. You need to measure Earth flat to believe you're on a ball with your religion. But in terms of anything practical and useful, Earth's measured flat. So you're going to measure Earth flat for your religion, and it's measured flat when they're dealing with world that is going to be built on, sailed on, flown across. You know, that's the world that is dealt with, flat. And you were taught that in geography too. So it doesn't really concern me that you've got a world belief that violates the base principle measurements of a flat surface that you were taught in geography class. They're not going to change. People get paid good money to adhere to how flat Earth is when they're measuring it and surveying it, mapping it, charting it, building on it, flying over it, sailing on it. Those people are being paid to deal with Earth flat. You're an inconsequential dweeb most of the time, sniffing your own farts, telling yourself that gravity's important, and because you can explain pseudo-Riemannian fourth-dimensional space-time, that makes you smart, and therefore what's sexy when you're sat with the girls around you? You're not, you ugly little dweebs. But you think gravity's important, don't you? Me, I know it's not. Therefore, I kind of think, why do I have to go through this? Who cares?
I was way ahead of you. I was telling Richard that a long time ago. I asked him that question. If you prove Earth is flat, and you will, by your measurement, does the solar system or anything else mean anything at all? And he agreed that it doesn't. But he also felt that it was important to prove that the Earth is not spinning. So go figure that out.
Yeah.
No, the reason he thought it was important to prove the Earth wasn't spinning is because it was directly tied to one of his ether proofs.
Yep.
Yeah, he's incorporating the not spinning aspect into the free energy aspect. So while we're here showing you that it doesn't spin, well, hold on, you don't have to prove a negative. What the bloody hell are you doing? Yeah, well, but we've also got this Mickelson. Oh my God. Just using this shit to interweave your bullshit about free energy so you can con people. That's it. That's the only purpose, to tell people that you're not spinning. Because what do you know? The quote-unquote experiment that showed we're not spinning also demonstrates that there's a luminiferous ether. And that's where we'll get the free energy from. What do you know?
Do you know what you measure in the Michelson-Morley?
There's a time differential between two light waves.
Well, not exactly. You measure a diffraction pattern between two beams of light.
Okay. Sounds very natural. Where does that happen?
Well,
in nature? Sorry, go on. You're not making this claim. My bad.
Doesn't matter. You need a flat plane reference to come up with that.
For the tool to function, to create the diffraction pattern, it's working with two planes of reference in terms of how the light's generated. But I don't think that's where John's going with this. Go ahead, John.
Well, you need discrete points of interaction to form the wave function to describe it as a wave. It's measuring those discrete points of interaction.
In reference to what? What is it measuring?
Still not. I'm still. Go ahead, John.
The photons. The photons. It's measuring the photons. The photon, the discrete point of interaction is what we observe. That's our reference. The photon is how we describe it in reality. That's the measurement on the photographic plate.
Okay. Other than, I don't know, because I'm out of date with their rhetoric of nonsensical free energy, is there some sort of assistance required in the incorrect aspect of light being a wave? Is that part and parcel, and you're undermining it by demonstrating the quantization of light in this respect? I don't really understand where you're taking this.
For them to assert that light is a wave and they can get free energy from this wave, they have to measure it as a particle to put that forward. You don't think that's funny?
I don't fully follow. So for them to describe the free energy, they need the light to be a wave, do they? I mean, I appreciate it isn't.
Well, the ether is what
of course. The ether carries the wave of light. It's not a wave. Yeah, now I follow. The penny's just dropped. So their bullshit rhetoric of having a light wave traverse a luminiferous ether, resulting in the potential free energy we're just not tapped into because the governments have stopped us, requires light to be a wave travelling through a luminiferous ether. It's not. Okay, I finally got it.
Yeah, you need it to be a particle for it to form the diffraction pattern for you to create the wave function to describe it as a wave.
Right.
And that's what they're looking at, is a differential between those two patterns.
I mean, it's so scummy when you're incorporating something that's incorrect with a rhetoric that you're trying to allege to debunk, only so you can interweave light waves traveling through a luminiferous ether to create a perception of free energy. Is so scammy and so scummy. These are the people that called me a scammer, by the way.
They called you a science scammer.
Yeah. Well, why? Well, because we can unpick this courtyard trick, parlor trick, whatever you want to call it, in terms of its lack of adherence to science, and ultimately undermine their suggestions of luminiferous ether and free energy, which obviously pisses them off. And what's the best line of defense when someone's calling you a fraud? Oh, we'll claim they're a fraud. So this is a scam. There is no free energy. There's no luminiferous ether. There's no light waves traversing anything. It is just bullshit. But if you're out there and you're hearing that and you're thinking, well, no, this individual says that it is. It's like, well, okay. Did you recently enter the Ugandan lottery? I mean, are you just prone to being scammed? What's the deal? Some people just get scammed.
It always tickled me.
Go ahead.
I just saying it always tickled me that every time they brought up the subject, they would always appeal to, particle physics or something like that for them to claim that it wasn't a particle and that we had a presupposition. You know what I mean? It's like, what are you doing to yourself?
Yeah. Another thing that does get described concisely in my book, that is to say, at various different points, I've attempted to educate these people that we're talking about, but not by name, but by suggestion. And it could be a whole group of people. That's why keeping it vague is appropriate, because there'll be a new group of scammers that use this same trick in 10 years from now. So, keeps it timeless if we don't actually mention any names. I know Neil did mention one, but we'll just move past that. But the suggestions of free energy come from a group of people that have incorporated a flat earth belief and the utilisation of conspiracy to keep the people who are fed flat earth intentionally by a controlled opposition that wants it to be a certain thing scammed with free energy claims. So you just got to point out to the people who are listening to this that when you hear somebody say that person's a scammer, we were talking about it with our Globe Earth opponents, right? During the week, like they behave scummy and suddenly they're calling the police. You're like, just bear in mind that the police just want to investigate anybody that's talking to them. That could be you if you're crying foul from the bottom of the driveway as an ex-wife stalker that's hanging around moaning about getting bullied by your ex-husband who wants nothing to do with you, or claiming that you're the one being abused. You're like, okay, very interesting. Meanwhile, we've got people on our own side that, in my opinion, are slightly lower down the pecking order than those scumbags. At least they're wearing their scumbaggery on their sleeves. When you're hiding your scumbaggery behind Michelson-Morley experiments and luminiferous ether waves giving you free energy, that, to me, because it comes under the banner of we can debunk the claim that Earth turns, is properly scummy. It's like next level scummy, in my opinion. And in the book, what I'm talking about is trying to educate certain individuals on what science is, because you undermine the classroom education about heliocentrism, that's science class, if you understand what science is. However, if you're utilising that exact same scam on the people who've just broken free of the shackles of heliocentrism, that is low, properly low. And what do I get for pointing that out or trying moreover to educate these people in what science and the scientific method was? Well, I get called a scammer. Did 12 months, however long, probably more than that now, 2.5 years it probably is since that happened. But ultimately, what's the point of all this? Well, the overarching point is for you, if you're reading my book or listening to this now, if you understand what science is, then you can see through what science isn't when it's claimed. Now, this is a case in point. Luminiferous ether falls into this category of pseudoscience. There is no scientific evidence. There's no observed phenomena. It doesn't adhere to step one like a lot of the heliocentrists' claims. But, it gets even more egregious when someone like me is coming along and saying, you do realise that science is being used to suggest that people are on a sphere, and that's part of the magic trick. What's that? You're using the same magic trick? What's that? I'm a scammer? What for saying science? Oh, right, okay, this is an interesting turn of events. Anyway, that's kind of what I write about in that particular.
What do you mean there's no proof? What about the 15-degree drift, Bob? No doubt proof.
The suggestion that there's a 15-degree-an-hour drift needs to come from a flat earther who then dies. Why? Well, because gyros aren't supposed to drift. And if your suggested claim of proof of sphericity is that gyros by default will drift at a rate of 15 degrees an hour, then they stop being useful for the applied practical application that they're being used for. So you can't have somebody of any note say gyros drift at 15 degrees an hour. What, gyros are useless, to rephrase that? Yeah, they're not. They are very useful and used. But if you can have a flat earther make the claim that Cavendish is making, no, sorry, Cavendish, Foucault is making with gyros and pendulums, then you can lean into the flat earther making your claim that isn't true for you. Sounds complicated? Let me explain. Gyros don't drift. The whole point of a gyro is it remains rigid in space. If the suggestion is that gyros will drift at a rate of 15 degrees an hour because Earth turns underneath them as a second separate non-inertial turning reference frame, then you need a gyro to display drift. They don't. Go back to point one. They remain rigid in space. That's why they're useful. So, can you have somebody of note in the heliocentric priesthood say gyros do drift when they don't? No, you need a flat earth knobhead to do it for you. So you give somebody a body pack and a transmitter, strap it to their body, and oh, what do you know? I've forgotten that I got a body pack shoved up my ass. And oh no, we've got a problem because this gyro is actually drifting. What, faulty? Yeah, well, that's why you got hold of it and it isn't on an aeroplane killing people, because if they drift, they're broken. But then you can have globe Earth believers, otherwise known as anti-flat earthers, say, look, Bob proved gyros are useless. I mean, gyros drift at 15 degrees an hour to suggest Earth is turning underneath gyros. So let's bring this to its conclusion. If Bob's right and gyros are useless and they show drift at 15 degrees an hour, then Earth is turning underneath gyros. And we'd frickin' notice. Yeah? Now, that does not occur. If you can't visualise this, think of the Foucault pendulum. What do pendulums do? Swing back and forth. That's it. That's what a pendulum does. So why does it appear to twist and knock over the dominoes? Well, because it's alleged Earth is turning underneath the pendulum. And if Earth is turning underneath gyros and turning underneath pendulums, then it's turning underneath aeroplanes and it's turning underneath hot air balloons. And we'd notice. So, if Earth is turning underneath an aeroplane, then a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles would only take an hour and a half, not 4 hours, because Earth's turning underneath as a separate non-inertial turning reference frame, something we do not notice. What's that I hear? Is that Dan? You and your reference frames are ruined, Nathan. These aren't mine, you bunch of dumb shits. But I can understand and break down how you need gyros to drift. And if they drift, you've got two reference frames. That's what drift is. What's that? My reference frames are ruined? No, we just don't see any drift, you bunch of fucktards. Now, as a flat earther 10 years into this subject, I can break this down nice and concisely. But this is unequivocally my least favourite subject. I hate Coriolis. To have to unpack it takes 3 or 4 minutes of non-stop psychobabble. Meanwhile, who gives the tiniest of shits? Earth's measured flat. Even in this nonsensical garbage that isn't true with drifting gyros, you need a non-inertial flat-turning reference frame to mathematically describe this effect. So you need a flat Earth for it, wrong though it is. An experience that we do not have on an Earth that is claimed to be turning, making gyros drift at 15 degrees an hour, because that means Earth's turning underneath and we simply don't see that. That's why you end up with anti-flat earthers telling you you've only got one reference frame. The conservation of angular momentum. What, no drift then? No 15 degrees now. Not thanks, Bob, for the drift that he showed. Why is it you're leaning into Bob, a dead man's drift? Yeah, because it isn't real. We'd notice. It would shorten flight times. I'm done.
Yeah, I thought that you added it on there at the end, like to describe any of this. And what we've been talking about requires 2 frames of reference. They are affixed to a plane. of reference. That's what the frame of reference is. It is a plane from which you will reference motion. All descriptions of motion require that plane to describe it from.
Yep. All roads lead to a flat Earth. Both the gravity, that's a downward perpendicular force vector, incorrect though it is, and Coriolis non-inertial turning reference frames, incorrect, I'll repeat it, that they are, require a flat Earth to describe them. So even in their incorrect assertions that they rely upon to believe in a heliocentric worldview, derived to explain epicycles and give them Easter and calendars and things that aren't to do with actual surface bending. But the current, heliocentric believers and anti-flat earthers need flat Earth planes of reference to describe their nonsensical effects, even the incorrect ones. All roads still lead to a flat Earth measurement. This is no exception.
Actually, I just got a message. Yes, all gyroscopes are technically supposed to drift, as it is natural, inherent, and inevitable characteristic of both mechanical and electronic sensor hardware. Over time, even at rest, the gyro output will slowly deviate from zero due to temperature changes, mechanical wear, or bias instability.
So you're telling me that planes don't fly in straight and level flight parallel with the ground as instructed by ground control? Oh, they do? Oh, how do they achieve such effects? Oh, with a gyro? Oh, so they don't drift then? No, they don't. Absolutely not. They wouldn't be useful. Their practical application is that they remain rigid in space. What's that? A fart-sniffing dweeb who thinks he's consequential to this has told you that actually gyros do drift? Really? So you're telling me that planes drift around in flight level? No, they don't. No, they definitely don't. No, they look at their little gyros in their little flight controls and they go, yeah, that's level because we're going to remain in level flight. And they do.
Yeah.
What it is?
The gyro has a fixed plane of reference it maintains as long as there is energy being input into the system to maintain its spin.
We're throwing pearls to swine. As much as I appreciate Neil reading that out, right? Whoever wrote that to you, you have no bearing on what Earth is. Just accept it, you little dweeb. Yeah? What you think is that this information that you're parroting off to Neil is something that will impress the ladies down the back. No, they think you're a dweeb. They scowl at you and would tell you to fuck off if you looked in their general direction. They all know you're a dweeb. But in your mind, this makes you special. Understanding our gyros are drifting. Number one, you're wrong. What's that? Dan says your reference frames are ruined, dweeb. Now go and fight with Dan, you pathetic little moron. Because this, your little tidbit of information, had absolutely no bearing on what planes do, how they fly, what the flight controller calls out to them in terms of what flight level they will adhere to. You had no bearing on any of that. You were a fart-sniffing, inconsequential little dweeb telling Neil, another man, no offence to him, who has absolutely no bearing on this whatsoever. So it could be read out on a Flat Earth show that, again, has absolutely no bearing on how Flat Earth is dealt with. Just so you, for 25 seconds, could feel like you had some importance in this subject. Let me be the first to remind you, you don't, you stupid dweeb.
Well, it does. When I checked it with Google, of course, AI has it. So he got the definition. He got that whole thing right from AI.
Actually, I can type a Google search and ask if gyros drift, and it says that they do.
Yeah, he got it directly. He got it directly from freaking Google and AI because I'm reading it right now. It's basically word for word for what he said. He also gave me the whole thing, what it says here, what it is, why it happens, how to fix it. So
fix it.
I'm not even going to waste my time.
Yeah, again, I'll just repeat what I've said. This fart-sniffing dweeb that has sent you this message thinks he has some consequence on Earth and what it does. You don't. You don't matter. Have you not been watching last week? I thought I made this abundantly clear to you, dweebs. I mean, I took the onus on myself. I don't matter. I don't make any difference to how a frickin' gyro remains rigid in space and therefore useful. I don't have any bear on this. What's that? I'm being told that my reference frames are ruined? Yeah, I know. people like Dan elevate Nathan Oakley to the lofty position of having some bearing and consequence on Earth and what it does in terms of its motion that you think is happening? I don't. I mean, it's nice that Dan can stick me on such a pedestal. Call them my reference frames? What the bloody hell are you babbling? Oh, it's projection. You want to have some consequence in this matter. So you need to make me wrong, and by contrast, you're going to stick me on a pedestal and suggest that me saying it incorrectly makes a difference to the world that you think has only got one reference frame. You fart-sniffing dweebs. Wake up. You are unimportant. Nobody cares if you can babble on about bloody reference frames. First and foremost, you're boring everyone. And you realise how boring you are. Listen to your own words that you've typed out from Google, that you did after a little search, from a little algorithm that's definitely not your friend either. It doesn't even have feelings. Your closest companion is a little AI algorithm in YouTube or Google. You've got no friends, you're a dweeb, and you're inconsequential when it comes to Earth. Now, the last thing that you had, that you were stringing along like it had some importance, was your feeling that you did have a bearing on Earth and what it does. You don't. I'm going to take that from you too, dweeb. Yeah? And metaphorically, I'm going to stamp on that head right until it's splattered into the curb. The idea of you having some bearing on it, you are utterly inconsequential. Make no mistake about it. I hope that's clear, dweeb. Whoever you may be.
Yeah, we won't give the dweebs no names, but the messages come flying in. I got about 7 or 8 different ones that every time the show is going on, bloop. So they're really paying attention to your show, Nathan.
Yeah, because I know exactly why. What's made them wanting me locked up while I make metaphors about their having their heads kicked in? Well, it's because I'm robbing that last morsel of self-importance that they've given themselves. Because they thought that they were interesting. In their minds, they're sat around with 20 or 30 people all in their favourite bar. It's like Friends and your Cheers or some soap opera. And they're like, oh, by the way, lads, everybody, I'm going to stand on this table and tell you about libration of the moon. And everybody goes, yay, this guy's cool. No, you're delusional. Everybody sneers at you because you're a boring dweeb. Now, what you thought was important, that's your knowledge of heliocentrism that you got from being a 12-year-old boy interested in frickin' rockets. I'm going to rob that from you and laugh at you for liking it, you pathetic bunch of dweebs. Yeah? It's sad. Yeah, you're into He-Man by equivalence. You're into Father Christmas by equivalence. It's sad. Haven't you grown out of rocket ships and this bullshit? Oh, you still think the people around you are interested in how gravity works and how the moon moves around Earth. You think you're interesting, and you're wrong. I'm going to make sure you know it too. Yeah? Well, you're telling me about how gyros drift. I look at you and go, gyros? You are boring. Do you understand me? Boring. Right? Even the pilots don't babble on about bloody gyros. They're looking at the legs of the women that go up and down the aisles, the hostesses. Have you ever met a pilot? They're not uncool people. They're not going, oh, that's my gyros drifting at 15 degrees an hour, you know. It's only one reference frame. So you don't actually see the drift. No, they're not. No, they're looking up and down the hostesses and thinking about, well, that one might sleep with me. That's what because that's the kind of guys they are, right?
Yeah, 007.
Yeah.
They're like freaking
but if you're
James
going
Bond.
to be dweeby, you should at least be dweeby about an important fact, right? Like being dweeby on reference frames and how, which have to be flat by their nature for them to be a coordinate system. It seems extra deep dweeby, you know what I mean? Like there's another level of dweebiness to it.
Yeah, dweeby stops being dweeby when it offers the ability, practically speaking, for somebody else to do something exciting. So if you're a guy who runs a racing car team and you've got a whole bunch of technicians that work on the computer-controlled systems for the electronic fuel injection system, you're a dweeb. But that's an F1 car right there. Tell me I'm a dweeb. And you go, yeah, okay, I get your point. You know, yes, you're doing a dweeby thing, but you are in ultimately a much cooler seat than me. So, you know, it's kind of swings and roundabouts in that regard. It's the same with a guy I watch who does computing, right? He's a dweeb. He likes tuning computers. So what does he do with his talent? Well, he tunes his computers for people who are willing to spend 10, 20, 30 grand on a computer so they can have 5 frames per second more when they're an e-sport guy shooting people on, I don't know, whatever the shooting games that they play are. I only play one, I only know Fortnite, and I'm sure that's not that competitive. But my point is, the people who are playing for 20 grand, 50 grand pots in these esports competitions will have a competitive advantage because Dweeb has given them one. Go and watch Frame Chasers and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Because he makes it point. He tries to make himself like James Bond, like I did when I was selling hi-fi to studios. I'm not producing music, but my amplifier's in that studio that did produce that cool music, therefore it's not dweeby. That was my attitude. These dweebs, they've got something that is utterly inconsequential. So you think your knowledge that you got from a Google search about how gyros do drift, you and your reference frames are ruined, dweeb. Why is that? Well, because it's inconsequential. You aren't actually utilising anything to do with gyros. You haven't built a gyro, you're not fitting one to an aeroplane, you're not flying an airplane, you're not looking at the hostesses. You're a dweeb. But you think, by going, actually, gyros do drift, blah, 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 Google regurgitation, you think that you are impressing the lady. You're not. You're completely delusional. You've got a boring subject matter that's inconsequential to the world you actually inhabit. You're not even giving esports gamers an edge with your dweeby geeky knowledge. You're not giving anybody anything. And that's what I'm going to keep rubbing in their faces. You think that knowing about gravity has got a practical application? Show me. How much did it make you this month? Oh, 0. It's just you thinking that you're going to impress the ladies down the pub. You're not. They're all looking at you because you're a dweeb, thinking either he doesn't exist, that is to say, they're looking straight through you like you're not even there, or they're sneering at you because you're boring them with gyros, you boring bunch of dweebs. So I'm going to rub this in your face moving forward, you bunch of idiots who oppose us. We don't need your opposition anymore. All we're going to do is look at you, because we don't care about the discussion or debate. There isn't one. So what are we going to be spending our time on? Psychoanalyzing you, dweeb. What's that? Oh, I love space. It's amazing. There's men floating around in a vacuum. Let's assess how pathetic this individual is. Because you are, you sad little 12-year-old boys. Why don't you all grow up? Obsessed with space and sky vacuums and rockets and gyros, you boring bunch of dweebs.
Yeah, what are you going to do, Nathan? You're going to constantly have opposition because they're still in a religious system that tells them they're on a spinning water ball.
Well, that's not opposition. That's wrong. John, tell him. They are not our opposition. They can delude themselves like conspiracy cats. You're not even going to pretend there's an argument. There isn't one. So I'm just going to look at you and go, why do you want there to be one when you're asking me if I'm not even pretending to have one anymore? There isn't one. So I don't see you as an opponent. I just see you as an irritating little twat, a dweeb. So I'm just going to start looking directly into your soul when I look into your eyes, not listening to your boring-ass words about gyroscopes anymore. Yeah? Don't need to prove myself in this regard. I absolutely, without question, know this subject inside out, back to front, like I need to, and I don't. So therefore, when it comes to any of the subjects that we used to cover in housekeeping, it's inconsequential. They're all redundant now. It's just geography. You were taught in geography how maps and a compass work, and how topographically we've assessed the world, we've measured flat. You all damn well know this. So you want to bark at me about bloody gyros, I'm just going to call you boring, because you are boring. Now, nobody noticed 10 years into it because of the internet. People thought you were consequential. Well, now we've realised there is no debate to be had. We've started psychoanalyzing the people around us, and it very quickly becomes apparent that they're just 12-year-old boys who never grew up. Sad little dweebs with self-importance and low self-esteem. Oh, I'm going to have you locked up. You're harassing... What, while you come to my house and park in my driveway and tell me I need to know about gyros, you boring dweeb. No, it's time to wake up. Our opponents will all be assessed as individuals. Your arguments aren't arguments. You are still under the misapprehension that we give two shiny shites about what you've got to say when it comes to heliocentrism. We don't care. Your globe was made with flat Earth measurements. Now, you can tell me I'm wrong. I don't give a crap. These are facts. And you don't have to like them. The fact that you thought differently shows, one, you are ignorant, and two, that you're still interested in stuff 12-year-old boys are interested in, you bloody dweebs. And you're boring everybody. It's time to move on. Yeah? There's girls out there, for God's sake. Why are you talking about gyros? It's
Nathan,
just dweeby.
You don't understand. You don't understand. There was this kid, his name was Eugene, and he always wanted to hang out with us, and he never stopped. Every day he would keep trying to hang out with us, and he never adjusted to what it means to be cool. This is what's happening now. They want to hang out, but they can't make the adjustment because they're dweebs.
Yeah, you only get to be cool and not care about the blonde that's staring at you if you have got, number one, other things going in your life. And number two, having a blonde stare at you is not that big a deal. You've had other blondes stare at you. Now, for a dweeb, the blonde never stares at them. And when she looks through you, remember in the first Superman where he waves at the two girls because they're waving at him, and they're waving at somebody beyond him. In other words, he is invisible to them, right? For a dweeb, when this happens, they think for just a fraction of a second, oh my God, she's looking at me. And in that moment, any semblance of coolness that they had vanishes immediately.
Yeah, it's pretty pathetic. It took some time, but he finally stopped trying and then just went with his other friends and dweebed out together.
Yeah, go dweeb out with
question
Dan. What's that? Gyro's Drift. Excuse me, my name's Simon Dan. You and your reference frames have been ruined. Go and talk to other like-minded, boring-ass dweebs. Yeah, those are your people now. We aren't your people. Now, you used to think they're our enemy. Therefore, we are like gladiators. No, you're not, you dweebs. Get over yourself. You had fake names and fake personas and you were on the internet pretending to be tough guys. About gyros! Hello? Step back and look at yourselves for a second. You think you're internet tough guys? You're talking about gyros! Hello? Dweebs. Get a grip. Well, that was a fun little rant. All about Coriolis effect. You can read all about it in my new book. It's coming out at Easter time. It's going to be called All Roads Lead to a Flat Earth by Nathan Oakley, and only Nathan Oakley. The one and only.
It's going to be a great book, by the way. I've been hearing little tidbits here and there. It's going to be outstanding.
Yeah, it's getting harder. So the first half of the book was far easier to edit. Now we're into chapter 8. Gravity and Coriolis and these long-ass chapters, molten iron core. It's a lot of work, but yeah, I think it'll be worth it. It'll be concise enough for people to get the point. Earth's measured flat, and it'll be information rich enough for people to appreciate some of the counterpoints that we used to argue against things like gravity when it comes to buoyancy and Archimedes' principles. Those will be in the book, but they'll be snoozeworthy. But they're kind of there's an expectation that they'll be talked about, right? There's a certain idea that people will have about what they'll get out of a book about flat Earth. So, for those people, they're going to be really keen to flick to the bit where I talk about Newton because they're perceived to be my enemy. Has he got it wrong about Newton? I can't wait to say actually to him. Oh my God, I think I'm moist. They do. These people get off on saying actually. 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 They do drift. Google said so. Oh, that was fantastic.
But you must pay attention to me. Don't you understand? You can't just bow out and do what you're doing and say Earth is measured flat. What about me?
Told them what about them. Go and speak to Dan.
You're wrong.
Go and argue with another dweeb like Simon Dan. He says your reference frames are ruined, dweeb. So go and argue with him. I already know Earth's measured flat for your entire religion. So I literally don't give a shit about you and will just sit and look at you and poke fun at how big a dweeb you are, how boring you are, how little you've had to do with the ladies over your entirety of your existence. How the chances of you going, what? Blonde? No, I didn't even look. I was looking at my microphone sales. You know what I mean?
Well, then
something
change
else.
the name of your show. Your show says Flat Earth Debate, and you refuse to have a debate with me.
That's not true. Again, people who are talking to Neil, right? What you are doing, you little girl, is passing a note to my friend. Yeah, the door is there. It's open. I advertise that fact on every intro, but you're passing notes, you little girl. I mean, do you want to live up to your stereotype? You want to be an internet tough guy, right? The way to do it is to pass my friend's notes under the table while the class is being delivered to you. I'm the teacher in this regard, right? I'm telling you, Earth is measured flat for your belief. Doesn't matter what aspect of it, every aspect of it requires Earth to be measured flat, and there aren't any exceptions to this fact. Now, you don't like that. You want me to be on the same level as you. And the higher the pedestal you can shove me up on, the more the mirror you have some importance to be glancing at in that mirror. And it's just not the case. Yeah, I know what I offer you, right? Well, I'm sorry, but what you're going to actually get is me looking into your soul when I stare into your eyes and call you a dweeb and look you up and down as I do it. Now, you might think, oh, I've got an internet in front of me. I can lie. I'm actually a spaceman. No, I'm actually a brain surgeon. Actually, I do make gyroscopes. I own the biggest gyroscope making company in the world. Ha ha ha. Yeah, I've heard it all. We've seen it all, haven't we? These bullshitters that suddenly become pilots and suddenly become astronauts the minute we point out how wrong their rhetoric is. Well, actually, I'm an astronaut, you know.
Actually, that was just me making the stuff up. Nobody was sending me anything. Yeah, I won't read anything they send, but it's nonstop. But I know all the things they do say. Like, you got a Flat Earth Debate show, but you won't debate. Well, he says the door's open, but I'm banned.
Nobody's banned. This server doesn't ban anybody. So far as I'm aware, everybody's welcome, nobody's banned. The people who have been banned previously in one of the servers, I specifically would approach someone like Righteous Force and go, I do not want Brenda anywhere near me, for example. Or Rumpus is a proven liar. He's on record admitting to this particular instance and then completely contradicting it 24 hours later. I do not want to poison my audience with a known liar. Ban him permanently. Same goes for people like Zanuck. No, this person's absolutely, without question, a liar. Now, they're full of bravado and full of the desire to chat, skank and talk over people, but they're here proving they are a liar. That's it. No, I don't give second chances. You can be disingenuous until I've proven that you know you're doing it. That's to say, once you're proven to be a liar, here you go, you're wrong. Yes, I am wrong. Well, let's hear you say it, how it's correct. And then they repeat it, only to completely contradict that 24 hours later. You're like, these people can't be trusted. I don't want to be in their presence anymore. But I could probably count the rest of them on one hand. There's people like Rob Noxious sending me endless streams of swear words and abuse via instant messengers. Now notice, I don't go to the police. So, oh my God, this person is on the internet telling me that I'm a fucker. No, I just banned him. Yeah, what's that? But you feel like that half a dozen people tops is including you. No, you've aggrandized yourself to some position of self-importance again, haven't you? Now, the door's definitely open. You could be coming in and stopping me talking right now, but instead it's just wishful thinking, right? Oh, Nathan's book was stolen by a couple of thieving bastards who said they wanted to make it their swan song. This is Nathan's swan song. No, it's wishful thinking. Now, I'll still be here so long as there's a heliocentrism for people to believe in, because then there is a perception of a debate. There isn't. When they get here, they find out very quickly how little debate there is to be had when you're measuring Earth flat for every single side of every discussion that we formerly had, past tense, over the last 10 years. There is no debate. That's what you find out within 10 minutes of coming on one of these shows. And the second you come into this arena while you're pretending that you're banned, what will you do? You'll use something that you know damn well will get you welcome to a flat Earth that you've just utilised when you tell us how flat you measure it. And you will. We know. You require Earth to be flat for your belief that you've sniffed your own farts with since you were 12 years old, telling yourself that the ladies love it. And they don't. You're just a dweeb, and you are inconsequential to how flat Earth does get measured.
Yeah, they missed all the flat Earth measurements in the beginning like we did.
They can never physically demonstrate any of the claims. And when they do offer you Earth measurement, it will definitely include an elevation angle. Fact.
I got your song. About, I don't know, 6 months ago, I wrote a song that was supposed to go to the music of Teenage Dirtbag by Weezer. 'Cause I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby. I'm sure you're all familiar. Well, anyway, I rewrote the lyrics to sit around that music and then just forgot about it because I found it while I was looking for something else in my notes because I'm starting to panic about my iPad. Actually, I should probably mention that. As much as I don't want to run a GoFundMe, my iPad started to play up. I say started, it's been a slow downhill progression of things going wrong on it. But it stopped charging on most of the chargers that I can plug it into, including the one it came with. For some reason, it only wants to charge on my wife's high-powered charger for her laptop. So it means that it's definitely got something wrong with it. And I don't really want to crack it open because I've already cracked the screen once. So if I take the screen out or ask Craig to, it will smash the screen, which is held together with super glue. So, I don't know, this 4-year-old iPad has lasted reasonably well, considering I use it about 13 hours a day. But it's now starting to give up the ghost, and I don't have the money to do a replacement. So I might run a GoFundMe campaign for it, or whatever I do recently, give Send Go. So as much as the guy over the last, what was it, on Thursday or Friday said, I hardly ever see you e-begging. Oh, well, that might change because my iPad's starting to give up the ghost and I absolutely depend on it and I don't have the money to pay for it. So as much as I've sold a load of microphones, it has kept me just the right side of the red/black line. And I've just paid off, I don't know, 2 or 3 credit cards that my wife and I had accumulated over the last year while I was flogging them. Well, now that I've actually started to accumulate the profit, it's all disappeared immediately. I was hoping to spend it on acoustic treatment, but that's probably not going to be the case. Anyway, but it means that when something does break, like always, I've got to e-beg to cover it because I just don't make enough money to put stuff aside to buy things like laptops, projectors, screens, speakers, whatever breaks, amplifiers. So this will probably be one of those occasions. So if you do in the next week or so see a GoFundMe campaign from me, hopefully people will support it and I'll get a new iPad. They cost like 500 to 2 grand, and I'll probably do a campaign for about £1,000 and hope that I can get near that amount and replace my iPad Pro with another one so I can continue making shorts videos and long form edited videos and running all the administration for Flat Earth Debate via the iPad. So yeah, I might have to do some e-begging. My wife's gone, don't announce any e-begging. I'm like, well, she's like, well, you've done so well for the last year plus. To not have to just before your book comes out seems really bad. I'm like, well, it's like one of those things. Sometimes things break and I can't let it just run out of battery and then not be able to charge it one day. I need to be able to plug it in wherever I'm sat next to it. I should have clarified that first. The battery doesn't last very long because it's old. So it just keeps running out and you have to constantly plug the damn thing in. Probably why it's not working. So anyway, that's a bit of a nightmare. I didn't really want to do any begging, but I might have to. So that's a downer. Oh, that reminds me of something else. Speaking of Teenage Dirtbag, I've actually got the song that I passed on to One Deck queued up. Does anybody want to hear it? Yes, Nathan.
Yes, Nathan. You're better off on YouTube than listening to it, though.
Yeah, you probably won't hear it very clearly through the Hangout. But this is, as I say, what I originally wrote to replace the music to Teenage Dirtbag, but fed into Suno or whatever it's called by One Deck. So I don't know what I called it. I think I called it I'm Just a Conspiratard Baby or something like that. Anyway, enjoy.
His name is Duran, I have a talk with him. He calls me a shill, got paid talks in half an hour. Oh, how fools flock in sandals and socks, but he doesn't know how it can be proved. But who gives a damn about it? I'm just a conspirator, baby. Talk about 9/11, maybe COVID and flu jabs lately, baby, with me. And his boyfriend's a prick, bring no guns to fools. Tailor to the Sims. Oh, how they flock, and he hates how I rock. That the measurements of Earth are flat. Pretends he doesn't give a damn about it. About it. I'm just a conspirator, baby. Talk about 9/11, maybe COVID and flu jabs lately, baby, with me. I've got 2 tickets to Antarctica, baby. Come with me now and don't say maybe. 24 hours of sunshine lately. Today you say can't be flattered on it. Today you say Earth is flat, but you won't listen. I'm just a conspirator, baby. Talk about 9/11, maybe COVID and flu jabs lately, baby, with me. I've got 2 tickets to Antarctica, baby. Come with me now and don't say maybe. 24 hours of sunshine lately. Today you say can't be flattered on it. Today you say Earth is flat, but you won't listen.
So that was titled by, not me, by One Deck, Where's Your Glock? I don't know why it's called that. Nevertheless, I presume it's some take on the fact that there's no guns in Antarctica. But nevertheless, that was my song, which I originally titled where something like I'm Just a Conspiratard Baby. Supposed to go to the music of Weezer. So thank you very much indeed for doing that, One Deck. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
But when you measure it flat, it contradicts that. I'm spitting flat facts and that. And I know you don't like that. Google Maps is flat, it presents elevation profiles like that. I'm a spitting flat earth king. Sentence has a ring, doing my own thing. If Earth was a big roast chicken, factually finger licking chicken. We just got the measurements missing. I'm spitting eggs and begs, begging the question lesson. I've said it before, time after time. I'm the spitting flat earth king of rhyme.